Thank you. Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming before the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I've got a series of questions, but I would like to give you an opportunity, if you would like. The suggestion that the ranking member has made here is that the big banks can now scam individuals right now. Any change in the laws regarding how they're supposed to be treating the individual consumers out there or anything along that line?
Law changes? No, I'm not aware of any
Any
law
changes, any rules that they would have to follow?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are they still audited, and do they still have the regulators in watching all of their businesses just as they did before?
Well, they'd have all the regulators except for the CFPB.
Very good.
If in fact, in the hypothetical, the CFPB weren't carrying that out.
Anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we continue to prioritize the stability and the resilience of our financial system, the ongoing Basel III rulemaking process has remained front and center in shaping our regulatory framework. I guess I was rather outspoken with my opposition to the original proposal, and further work was stalled at the end of the last year. I guess my question for you today, sir, is could you provide an update on the Federal Reserve's progress in finalizing the Basel III endgame rulemaking process?
I'd be glad to. So we remain committed to completing Basel III endgame. We think it's good for U.S. banks. It's good for our economy that there be a global standard beneath which foreign banks can't fall. And that was one of the big ideas behind the whole Basel Committee approach. So where it sits now is we await leadership arriving at the OCC and the FDIC, and that seems to be happening. And when that happens, we're going to sit down with them and work our way through to a Basel III endgame proposal. And I think we can do this reasonably quickly, one that is compliant, consistent with the Basel requirements, and also consistent with what other large jurisdictions are doing. I'm optimistic that we can do that fairly quickly, and we're committed to doing that.
We always wanted our banks to be competitive with European banks, and I'm just curious, the original proposal that was in front of you, and I'd like your thoughts on this, it was estimated to increase our bank's capital by 19%, which I think may very well have created a potential disadvantage within the U.S. institutions versus our European counterparts. With any new proposal, what's your thoughts? Would you make a commitment that this would be a neutral approach with regard to capital?
The main commitment I'll make is we'll work together with new leadership at the other banking agencies to do something. But that's certainly, I've said many times in this committee that I think that the level of capital in the largest banks is about right, and so it'll shake out somewhere in that area. I would guess. Our
expectation would be, and the markets would expect that it would be neutral with regard to capital.
In that range, but I want to defer to our new colleagues and get their views as well. But that's a good starting place.
Okay, thank you. The Federal Reserve's partnership with the U.S. Treasury plays a central role in supporting our nation's payment infrastructure, which processes a vast range of daily transactions, from federal benefit disbursements to debt obligations. Could you outline the Federal Reserve's role in supporting and managing the Treasury's payment systems, including how the Fed works to keep these systems secure, efficient, and capable of handling the government's high volume of daily transactions?
So it's a complicated set of arrangements, and I'll try to summarize quickly. Effectively, Congress authorized spending, and then the agencies carry out those spending orders. And the way they do that is they send an order to pay a payee, a recipient, to the Treasury Department. Upstream, before it gets to the Fed, all of these decisions are made about: is this an appropriate order? Is this payee on the don't pay list, and all those things. Once all of that is set, it comes to the Fed, and by that I mean 4 or so of the reserve banks, and we actually make the payment. We take the money out of the Treasury General account and we make the payment. We make no judgments whatsoever. Those are all made upstream from us, and we are, in fact, the fiscal agent of the Treasury.
Confirm for me today, is the system safe today?
I believe it is, and I will tell you, we are very strongly committed to the integrity, efficacy, resilience, and all those things of this system. And people do depend on this in a big way, and we're committed to that.
One last question for you, sir. The failure of Silicon Valley Bank, and the chairman brought this up. I'm just curious, recognizing a lot of banks out there looked at this, it cost the other banks in the system a lot of money to pick up the costs involved in the losses. Nobody's been fired, but you did indicate that it was a failure in the playbook. Has the playbook been revised, or can we expect that it will be revised?
In a lot of ways, it's been revised, yes. I can go into some details. I mean, one thing that didn't happen was, for example, the supervisors didn't follow through aggressively enough on things that they'd said. If they'd done that, that could well have been enough to stop it. But a lot of it was just not focusing enough directly on what was a very large amount of interest rate risk, a large portfolio of long-term securities matched up with an unstable funding base. And somehow people wrote about that, and not the Fed, but others wrote publicly about this, but somehow we don't expect bank runs outside of a crisis in this country, and that's what that was. It was a bank run, and bank runs are incredibly damaging. I think everyone learned a lot from that and is determined to do better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is one that I think, as you appropriately pointed out, I think this is an area where a lot more questions are out there yet, and I think if it's the playbook that was the problem, I think perhaps a discussion about how that playbook has been revised would be appropriate in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator